Hey everybody, welcome to the Pretty Focused Roadmap. But we're also, I should just say maybe welcome to Pretty Focused because I know we're streaming onto YouTube as well. So whether you're on YouTube or you're here on Facebook, we just want to welcome you. So as we have people joining us, there's been quite a bit of buzz about this live, which we're really excited about. But if you can tell us in the comments, since this is all about cameras, tell us kind of where you're at with your whole camera buying journey. Are you looking to buy a new camera? Are you looking to upgrade your camera? Do you currently have a camera? What do you have? Like, just give us that information in the comments because that's going to really help us be able to speak to you and really help you get the most out of this live tonight. So,
yeah, this is like, I was gonna say, this is the number, oh my God. This is the number one question we give. Sorry, I thought you were taking a break. So I was trying to
I was Ing. So go ahead.
It was like a Regis and Kathy moment. I was trying to I was gonna say, this is the number one question far and beyond, seconded by lenses, right? What lenses do I need?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just thought, because it is the number one question, there's so much to it. Instead of can't just easily say this, right? There's so much information whenever it comes to cameras. And so tonight we're going to break it down in pretty focused fashion, which basically means it's going to be the easiest to understand way of learning, right? Because we have a lot of people coming in and that don't know anything about photography. And so a lot of these terms and learning something new can just feel overwhelming. That's how I felt in the very beginning. I remember I asked a photography buddy friend of mine, I was like, what camera do I get? And he was like, get this camera. And so I did, right? Like I just bought what he told me to. And so then I just feel like it was years of trial and error and learning and it's like it just years of experience that kind of has helped me really understand it. So it didn't come at the very beginning, right? It's just through lots of practice, through lots of reading and through lots of learning. And sometimes there's even been things where I've read at one point and I'm like, wow, this is really over my head. But then a couple of years later, or maybe a couple months later, it's like it finally clicks with me. And so that's just kind of how it goes. I think anytime you're learning something new. So I want you to listen to me, whether you're new to photography or you are, and you're interested in joining Pretty Focused, or you are looking to upgrade your camera, maybe you're already in Pretty Focused, or you want to upgrade before you join, or you simply just want to learn how to use the camera that you currently have better so you can become a better photographer. This slide is going to provide you with a lot of information about cameras, and we're breaking it all down. So as you already know and have heard, like there are so many kinds of cameras. The top brands you're going to hear the most about are Canon and Nikon. I will say most of our students in Pretty Focused are Canon shooters, but I don't know. I'm looking at Lenore right now. She might know this. I think it might be like a 60-40. This kind of feels about sprinkled in with like a couple of Sony users, but those are just very small percentage. But even within those brands, there are different makes and models, right? There's crop sensor, there's full frame, there's mirrorless, there's DSLR. So it's really overwhelming. How do you narrow this down? So if you can imagine, I can't go into every camera made. I would love to be able to do that, which means I would have to be able to buy all of the cameras to learn them. So that would be really cool, but can't do that. But what I can do is break it all down like these universal concepts, because while there's different brands, there are concepts that are going to be the same no matter what camera you have, whether it's Nikon, whether it's Canon, whether it's Sony. Okay. So, but I will say this live is really going to be centered. You're going to see a lot of Canon cameras. A lot of this you're going to learn here can be applied to those Nikon cameras as well. Okay. So here's what we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk about phones versus professional cameras. Let me change my slide real quick. We're going to talk about DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. We're going to talk about crop versus full frames, old versus new cameras, and we're even going to talk about megapixels and how they affect image quality, because you'll kind of hear in the photography world megapixels really don't matter, or like I just read and have heard some conflicting things about megapixels. So really, what are they and how do we understand them and apply them to what it is that we are doing as food photographers for food bloggers? So grab a pencil, grab a paper, get ready to screenshot slides, and get ready to ask questions, because we are here for it all right. So we're going to start with phones versus pro cameras. Whenever it comes to camera related questions, this is like the number one question that we probably within that, like the subcategories that we get asked within, like, what camera do I use? By the way, can I use my phone? And so I just want to address this at the very, very beginning. What we do and teach in Pretty Focused, you need to use a pro level camera, okay, instead of a phone. I consider here's what I say by pro level cameras, because that's really broad. So pro level cameras are going to be like the full frame DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Basically, that camera that you can take the lens off and on. I am not referring to like a point and shoot camera. That does not work in this field either, okay? Now listen, so despite how your photos may look on when you post them to social media, or they look on your phone when you take them with your phone, they are going to be a lower quality than a pro level camera. All right. That's just megapixels all across the board. The quality is going to be lower. Okay. Another reason why phones are not going to work is because the aspect ratio is different from a phone to a camera. The aspect ratio for a phone is 3:4. The aspect ratio for a pro camera is that 3:2 ratio, which is comparable to a 35 millimeter camera. This is going to cause problems whenever it comes to sizing and collaging for both blog posts, or for blog posts among other issues. Okay, so ratios are not the same here. The iPhones, you guys, I have an iPhone 12 Pro. I know that's probably a couple of years behind the times. And I love my phone for taking photos to quickly post on stories, or to quickly post a behind the scenes photo of what I'm doing, or my family. And I even have like a little printer for my little iPhone photos. So I love my phone and I love the convenience. It is going to be ideal for your personal use and posting on social media. The pro level cameras are ideal for providing professional images to paying clients. All right. So I want you to think about it this way. This is the analogy that I give, is whenever how many of you guys do family photos every fall, right? And this takes months of planning. Like, you've contacted the photographer, 6 to 8 weeks in advance. Some of you more than that. You have your outfits planned, which is like, pulling your hair out, and coordinating outfits. And you go to Old Navy and Target and Macy's, and you're looking at all of these places to make sure you have the coordinating outfits. Some of you might get your hair done. Some of you might get your makeup done, right? So you put a lot of effort into these photos. So, and then you pay a lot for them too. Then you walk the day of your session and you walk onto location, and your photographer pulls out a cell phone. And I mean, you're paying her $300 to $400 for your family photos. And she pulls out a cell phone and says, "Don't worry, you guys, I have an iPhone. It's the latest version. These are going to look great." Well, not when you go to print them, not whenever you go to blow them up and put them on your wall. You know what I mean? It'll look great on social media. This isn't ideal for paying clients. And that's what we're doing here with Pretty Focused, is that we are teaching people how to create businesses. Our 13.6% of our grads are making six figures, and they are not doing it with their iPhone. Okay. They're using professional grade cameras. So I want to just put that out there first and foremost, that we are talking about using pro level cameras in Pretty Focused, not our phones. Okay. So, let's now talk about DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. So whenever it comes to these, let's talk about the difference here. DSLR stands for digital single lens reflex. These work based on a mirror inside the camera. Do you love these diagrams? I love them. Lenore made these. They are fantastic, beautifully pretty focus branded. And I just love this visual so you can see what is actually happening inside the camera. So the DSLR works with a mirror inside the camera, capturing the image and reflecting it up to an optical viewfinder that you see there in the graphic, right? You see all that bouncing around, all of those lines and arrows. Mirrorless cameras have hit the market in recent years and are becoming a favorite among photographers. You might even read articles about how DSLRs are becoming obsolete and mirrorless is like the future of digital cameras. So you're gonna hear that a lot. So this is kind of at this point where it seems like the camera world is going. So the mirrorless cameras still uses the interchangeable lenses like a DSLR, but there is no mirror that reflects the image up into the viewfinder, okay? So instead, the sensor reflects the images to an electronic viewfinder. So it's almost like a little computer screen right there inside of your camera. And the optical viewfinder on the DSLR only lets you see like an overlay of where the focal point will be and how your photo is going to be composed. Whereas the electronic viewfinder of the mirrorless allows you to see the focal points, the white balance and exposure right there in the viewfinder. It's awesome. So you're going to know what that photo looks like before you even take it. I can't tell you how many times on my Mark IV, my DSLR, I've taken a picture, right? You look at the back of the screen and you're like, no, it's completely overexposed. It's completely underexposed. This is highly stressful in portrait photography, right? Or, with cupcakes, you're just like, okay, great. I'll just readjust and keep going. But with the mirrorless cameras, that electronic viewfinder allows you to just see what it's going to look like before you even take it. So it's pretty magical. I'm sorry. I forgot to change the slide. Stephanie, can you take over the slides for me?
Oh, yes.
I'm looking at my notes and going back and forth. So
no problem.
Okay, so you can see this is what on the left, this is what that electronic viewfinder looks like. I remember after I got my mirrorless camera and I went and used the Mark IV and I looked in the viewfinder and I shot back. I was like, what happened? And it was just so different. So I was very, I feel like I'm an old soul in some ways and I get very set in my ways and it's hard for me to change. And so when I had a friend start telling me about mirrorless cameras, I was like, not going to happen, right? DSLR power or something, I don't know. But I have made that change and I have been really happy with it. So that's fact mixed in with my opinion. All right, so let's go on. Let's see some of these differences right here. Other differences between these two cameras are the shutters. The electronic shutter on the mirrorless means that it is much quieter, thank goodness. So I'm going to show you a video on the next slide. And so you'll actually be able to see the mirror move out of the way. Because the fact that there are less moving parts, is that going to go? Is that video?
No, we'll have to play it after separately.
Okay. So it's loud. Let's just say that it's loud. So you have the shutter that's loud, and then that mirror is also slamming and moving out of the way, making it really loud. You don't have that with the mirrorless camera. So let's go on to the next slide, Stephanie.
Okay. I'm just loading up that video too.
Oh, awesome.
But you can keep going while I'm.
All right. So you just let me know whenever we have it, because I want you to hear I want you guys to be able to hear that difference, especially if you've never shot on a mirrorless before. So one quite noticeable difference between these two, and what really makes that mirrorless more of like a selling point for that and for me, was the amount of focal points on the DSLR versus the mirrorless. So if you just look at I see it rendering slowly. Is it going to play? Oh, no. Okay, that's fine. We'll move on. I lost I lost you, Stephanie. Oh, she's working on it. Okay. I can't get why can't I get the slides to change?
Oh, sorry. It won't work. Here, let me do that for you.
Oh, okay. I quit. Oh, got it. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Stephanie. All right. So this is like this is the amount of focal points on a full frame DSLR. I was thrilled with this whenever I upgraded from a crop sensor. I'm going to show you that in a little bit. So it just gives you more focal points, makes it easier to compose your photo and makes it easier to nail focus. Let's take a look at what the mirrorless has on the next slide. So basically,
Well,
you see all the red? Basically, the
right.
entire screen is just full of focus points. There's over 6,000.
Oh, wow.
This gives you freedom and flexibility on your focus, right? So this is huge. This was a really big selling point for me. So if we go on now to the next one, Stephanie, the DSLR cameras, let's talk about lenses. There are more affordable lenses. However, or the mirrorless cameras, they're going to be a little bit, mirrorless lenses are more expensive. You need an sorry. Let me start over. I need to rewind real quick. Mirrorless cameras have pricier lenses to go with them. They have mirrorless lenses, but you can use an adapter on a mirrorless so you can use your DSLR lenses on the mirrorless. This is what I do. This is my setup. I have yet to buy mirrorless lenses because they are more expensive and because this is a fantastic way to be able to use them and not have to switch your lenses over. So just this adapter, this was an additional $200 that allowed me to still be able to use those lenses. Better $200 than another $2,000 for lenses, right? So one thing that was apparent as I researched the differences between these two was that there really were more consistently more pros to mirrorless cameras. So here's just a quick recap. Though while there were more pros, I do want to say that DSLR cameras are still capable of taking really high quality images. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters. Okay. Sometimes they're even comparable on budget too. So it's not like you're going to be paying an arm and a leg for mirrorless cameras. So DSLR cameras have been around for longer. They have a longer lasting battery. There are more lens options. DSLRs are more limited in focus than a mirrorless, though they still have plenty to choose from. Like 61 focal points isn't anything to cry about, right? Mirrorless cameras, they're lighter, thank goodness. They're faster. They have a faster shooting speed and they're quieter. They do have more focal points. They're great for video, especially the new, like the Mark IV Canon now has facial tracking, but a lot of the mirrorless have that facial tracking, which makes focusing on video so much easier, right? Especially when you can touch screen it and you can just touch screen. So the mirrorless are great for video as well. The R5, which is the top level one, is a better hybrid than say the R6. But that's something if that you are considering video down the road, mirrorless is really going to be the best of both worlds, right? However, there's pricier lenses and they do have a shorter battery life. So if you have any questions as we go on, I see a lot of questions. So we're going to star all of those and get to them at the end. I want to let you know that I'm not ignoring you. I just want to kind of continue on because there is a lot of information. This is going to be available for replay. And it's going to be available somewhere else for you to be able to view, which I'll talk to you guys about it at the very end. So let's keep going with DSL or crop sensor versus full frame cameras. So you've probably have heard these terms and you've wondered, does it really make that big of a difference? Yes. And we're going to explain why here. A crop sensor is often referred to as a budget camera or an entry-level camera, and a full frame is referred to as like a mid-level and pro-level camera. So that when you hear those things, like that's kind of what we're talking about. Now, what is a sensor though? You see that the crop sensor has a smaller sensor, the full frame has a bigger sensor, but what's a sensor and why do I care about it? That's how many of you guys have that question? The sensor is a piece of hardware inside the camera that captures the light and converts it into signals, which result in an image. It consists of millions of light-sensitive spots that record what is being seen through the lens. Now, the size of a full-frame sensor has the same physical size of a 35 millimeter full-frame camera. Okay. Let me go on. But the size of the crop sensor on a crop sensor camera is, you guessed it, it's smaller. Okay. It's cropped in, hence the name crop sensor. But the amount of crop depends on the camera's manufacturer. As you can see in this diagram, that the large box represents the sensor size on a full frame, like the light pink box, and then like the medium pink, this represents the Nikon, and then even the darker pink then is Canon. So a Nikon is cropped in from that 35, they crop in 1.5 times, and Canon is at 1.6 times. Okay, so this is really important to know, that we'll talk about like it in like later on. But it's important to note that difference right there. So if you look at these two photos shot at the same distance with the same lens, but one was on a full frame and one was on a crop sensor. So you can see there that crop sensor is, it's the same setup, right? It's just cropped in. That's what the crop sensor does. Crop sensors typically have a lower quality because it has less of a surface area to be able to capture information. Other differences, include weight. Crop sensors are lighter than full frames, and this is due in part to being smaller, but there are other like manufacturing differences that play a part in the weight as well. In my experience, we're going on, I don't know if I'm going too fast, Stephanie, if you want to keep going on, here we go. In my experience, crop sensor cameras typically have more dull cameras than full frame cameras. However, using an expo disc, which we talk about in the guide section of this of the roadmap, help with this significantly. So I think whenever you're working on a crop sensor, the expo disc is going to be your best friend to really help with colors. But you can see there, the colors on the crop sensor, I just changed that, I think. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I didn't mean to click. You saw that the colors on the crop sensor, they were more dull than like the vibrant colors on the full frame. So, and this would be like the auto white balance, right? So talking about auto white balance, you're not setting any custom white balance. The colors are going to be different. Whenever you are using the expo disc and you're setting custom, it's going to be, you're going to have better colors. Okay. All right. So if we keep moving on with the full frame cameras, there are quick access buttons, which you're going to see, which you can see on the next slide. I'm going to go ahead and go to that, Stephanie. You can see, oh, I'm sorry. We're going to go back one.
Oh,
there we go.
okay.
Okay. All right. So you can just see, this is like a top view of a crop sensor and a top view of a full frame. And you can see right there that the buttons, there's more options on the full frame. And this is because these are typically used by pro photographers who have to make quick and fast adjustments and decisions whenever they're shooting, and they need to have those controls more readily available. Okay. So you're going to see that. You're going to see that whenever it comes to the full frame. So let's talk about the next difference. More focal points. So you can tell, like, this is a really big deal to me. And I didn't even realize it until I upgraded what I was missing out on. So these are the focal points on a Canon 60D. This is a crop sensor camera. This is maybe a mid-level crop sensor camera. So even within like crop and full, there's entry, mid, entry and like mid-level, right? So this is a mid-level crop sensor, but it's an old camera. There are how many focal points? 9. There's 9 focal points compared to the 5D Mark IV, which is a full frame, has the 61 focal points. So this really makes a really big difference. As you can see, if you've made that switch from a crop sensor to a full frame, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So
Melody, if we were to now compare the mirrorless, is this where that screen that was all red would come in? So you have
yes.
like budget is 9. This is a, 50. I don't know how many is there. And then mirrorless is
60.
even
the crop sensor mirrorless cameras have phenomenal, like 3,000 focal points, right? So you're still able to get quite a bit. I don't know if that's the exact number, but there are significantly more focal points even on a crop sensor mirrorless camera than on a DSLR crop sensor. Did I say all that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just do a quick recap of crop and full frame. Crop sensors, cameras, they are great starter cameras. There is no denying that. And Kelly, we're actually going to talk about this here in a minute when we talk about old versus new cameras. So crop sensor cameras are great starter cameras and they can produce decent work. I still have my 60D. It's old at this point in technology years. And I have a Canon T8i, and they can produce some pretty great images. You're going to want to use like the best light possible. So if you do not have good natural light, we are super blessed living here in Arizona. We had some clouds today, but usually it's sunny. And so we have great natural light, and I've got a big south facing window. If you don't have that and you're working on one of these cameras, you're probably going to want to invest in natural light or artificial light. Artificial light investment is around $600, I think, for everything. And so you can compare that to a new camera, right? You're like, I'm not quite ready that, but maybe for a new camera to make that leap, but maybe I can start with artificial light and make that investment.
And lots of our students who are using full frame and mirrorless still use artificial light. So it's an investment that can carry on, right?
Yes, absolutely. I do think this happens. I do think that I just talked to somebody earlier this week who was like, I had an older crop sensor and my client was noticing and I had to upgrade. So I do think there comes a point where you're going to outgrow that crop sensor camera and that you're going to want to upgrade. If you are a grad listening to this and you are still working on a crop sensor camera, you may want to consider upgrading to a full frame. Colors are better, quality is better. When I upgraded, I felt like it put me in a whole other league of photography. Honestly, you guys, when I upgraded my lens and when I upgraded my camera, I remember significant times being like, I have arrived. I feel like I can charge, I feel like I'm worth what I'm charging now, right? Because I had the know-how, but I had the know-how, but my camera was not allowing me to execute well on that, and that will hold you back. So if, like I said, if you're a grad, you might want to consider upgrading.
Right.
So if you are just starting out, crop sensors are okay.
Right.
It is okay.
You need to learn how to use it first, right?
Yes. Yeah. So, but it might, this might be one of those things that you ask yourself, just that you're just aware of whenever it comes time to upgrade. You'll be like, well, Melody did say that there's going to come a time. And so you are going to know whenever it's time. You're going to feel like that tension either with clients or even with yourself. Like, I know how to take a good picture. What's happening? Could be your camera. So full frames, they do handle low light better. They have more focus abilities. They produce higher quality images. They are going to be more expensive, but will last longer as it's a camera that you can continue to grow into. So let's here's I have some examples taken with crop and full frame cameras. So whenever I say like you can still take quality images with the crop sensor cameras, okay? I don't want anybody to start feeling bad about having a crop sensor. This is not like we're not shaming anybody. Just
Right.
presenting you guys with some information. But I want to show you that when you're using an expo disc, when you're using great light, you can still take some really, really great cameras or photos. If you want to go on to the next one, Stephanie. If you've seen any of our presentations with Pretty Focused info sessions, you've seen these photos. One was taken with a 60D. The other one was taken with my Mark III. These photos, one was taken. I don't know which one, you guys. I'm sorry. I don't remember.
Is the plate blue? Like, is it actually blue, or did that?
What do you mean? Is it blue?
On the left side, the plate is so much bluer or greener.
I think it is. I think the left one was taken with a T8i and the right was taken with the Mark III, because I think the colors are the R6 or Mark IV, a full frame camera.
Got it.
But you can see that the colors are different. So in real life, this one, the one on the right, is closer to the real life of the color of the board. But what did you think, Stephanie?
I assumed it was because the plate was so much richer, right?
Yeah. Okay. So how many of you guys feel like your head is spinning right now? I know it's like, please tell me this is going to be available for replay later, because you're probably going to want to go back and listen to it again. Yes, it's available. So now let's talk about old versus new cameras. The major difference here is between old and the new is the fact that the technology on sensors has drastically improved. So while you may end up having the same megapixels and sensor size on an older camera as a newer camera, right? The newer camera is going to perform better because of the overall improvement of the sensor. This is going to be noticeable in low light settings. Images on older cameras are going to appear grainier than newer cameras. Something that we find with Nikon cameras, Nikon crop sensor cameras, is they do not handle low light the best. There's a couple of models in particular that you cannot go, like around 800 is whenever it starts to get really, really grainy. So again, going back to having artificial light in those scenarios, if that's the camera you have, is going to be really, really helpful. Something else is with the old versus new cameras is the focal point. So this is like the third time I've talked about this, so you can see just how important this is. Here is an older camera, the 60D, 12 years old. It has 9 focal points. Now take a look at the T8i, which is a Rebel, which is more of an entry level. Like I said, the 60D is that mid-level crop sensor. Rebels are the entry-level crop sensors, and look at the difference between those two.
Melody, is the 60D still in production?
I would have to look.
Oh,
I
but
don't think so.
I was just wondering if it was, and you bought like a 2-year-old 60D, would it have more?
Oh, no. No. You would get that old version. It would be upgraded to like a 70D, like it would, or it would be called like a 60D Mark II. It's not, but
Got it.
Or like a 70D or an 80D. So it's like when they upgraded the Mark III, it was called the Mark IV.
Yeah.
So
this is strictly because of age.
Yeah.
Less.
Yeah. Age and technology.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And so something else with the older cameras that Kelly brought up earlier is that they're not going to be supported by software. And so that can be a little bit challenging. Newer cameras I put on there, they're going to be better in low light. So then to give us, I think we already talked about that, but to give a summary of old versus new cameras, if you're using an older camera, you can create good images as long as you get a lot of great light. Do you hear this theme over and over again when you're working with crops and we're working with fulls? Light is going to be crucial here. Light, and then I think custom white balance is going to be really big. So whenever it comes to custom white balance, I'm going to just rabbit trail for a little bit. When you use an expo disc, it accounts for all of the colors: red, the blue, and the yellows, and the greens, and the pinks. It accounts for all of that. Whenever you are doing like Kelvin, it's just accounting for the blues and the yellows. So when you're using an expo disc and you're setting that custom white balance, you get a well-rounded white balanced photo, okay, with all of the colors. All right, so megapixels. This was a lot. I was like, whenever I started learning about this was a lot. So let's talk about what a megapixel is. A megapixel is the smallest unit of visual information. And if you want to skip ahead 2 slides, Stephanie, 1 megapixel is equal to 1 million pixels. So when you hear that a camera has 20 megapixels, it's actually referring to the fact that you have 20 million pixels covering your image. Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot of pixels. Megapixels determine how much detail is captured. Typically, the higher the number, the more detail it can capture. So one would think that more would be better, right? But like most things in photography, you can't just rely on that number. There's actually a little bit more to megapixels than just that number. All right, so the number of pixels certainly are important, but there are a few other factors that also matter whenever it comes to megapixels, right? Such as pixel pitch, which is the size of the pixel, okay? The pixel area, which is the area which the pixels cover. There's pixel density, which is the number of pixels in 1 square centimeter. And then even the size of the sensor matters here. The size of the pixel matters because a bigger pixel can hold more light. So I want you to think of it as this little illustration here. The bigger the pixel, or the bigger the bucket, the more water it can hold, right? The bigger the pixel, the more light it can hold. So typically when you have a larger pixel, your camera's going to handle better in lower light situations, which is why those older cameras and those crop sensors don't handle low light well, is because they don't have a big enough, the pixels aren't big enough. You're like, but this is a 20 megapixel camera. Why are my photos turning out this way? Like, why am I struggling with quality and graininess? And it's because of the size of the pixel makes a difference. So you might be wondering, like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this information now? When it comes to the work that megapixels matter, when it comes to printing your images in a large scale format or cropping your images, this is really where you're going to see it. So why does it matter for what we do as food photographers, for food bloggers? So we don't need to be overly concerned about our images being blown up into large scale format. Like I'm talking like 12 by 18 or larger. Typically they are shared online. The area that we do need to pay close attention to is whenever it comes to cropping. You can definitely crop photos, absolutely. But you have to be careful, because if you start cropping in too much, you're going to lose detail and the quality of your image, right? So you go too big, you lose image quality. You go too small and you lose image quality. So let me go on. I'm skipping ahead. I'm lost on mine. Okay. If you want, so this is like high level megapixel information. If you want to dive more into learning about megapixels on your camera, I have this great resource that I stumbled upon, and I highly recommend this website because it shares all of the details with you and allows you to compare cameras. So it's, as you can see, it tells you the pixel pitch of the camera. It tells you the pixel area, the density. It really breaks all of that information down from camera to camera, and you can compare them side by side so you can really see which one is going to make a difference for you, and maybe just help you understand the camera that you have. So I need to grab the link and I'll share it in the comments later. But this one thing that this website isn't going to have is like the quality or the technology of the sensor. It'll have the sensor size. It doesn't have other performances of the camera. So this is just strictly sensor size, or yeah, the sensor size and like the megapixels and how all of that works together. So it kind of gives you a really great like snapshot of all of that. So what do you look for in a camera? Because I just shared a ton of information. So how do you take it and apply it? Like what order should you go in? I think first and foremost, you have to decide your budget and how much you're willing to spend. That is going to matter like the most. How much can you spend right now? And then decide if you want to go the DSLR and mirrorless route. Which way do you want to go? Because then within DSLR and mirrorless, they have crop and full frames. Okay, so budget, DSLR or mirrorless, and then within that, they both mirrorless has crop sensor and full frame camera. So then you can decide. That's going to kind of help you decide. Your budget will help you know which one to go if you are only able to get a crop sensor or a full frame. Look at the focal points. You heard me talk about it so much. Focal points matter. They matter a lot. They're going to make photographing and nailing focus and composition so much easier. And then you can look at the megapixels on your camera and really kind of dive into the differences there with all of the megapixels. Okay.
I was thinking of something else here, Melody, as you're talking.
Yes.
Should people be at like budget and then what's my lighting situation? And I was thinking, do I have good light or do I need to work at night? Right? Is the other one, because we have people who work all day and can only photograph basically when the sun goes down or their kids go to sleep. And so they're going to have to buy artificial lighting or a camera that
or
the low light
that can handle.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Obviously, whenever I say low light, I'm not talking about like
Dark.
It's dark, right? And overhead lights do not count as artificial light.
Got it.
So, but I think that's a really great point that you have to ask yourself is, how is my lighting? When am I going to be able to shoot? And so that will kind of really also help you decide which way to go. Because as you heard also, if you're working like crop and the older cameras, lighting is going to be really, really important here. So we talked about a lot, and I'm going to answer your questions here in a minute. But you might be wondering, okay, a lot of information. I'm going to get a camera. How do I learn to use it? This, right? Okay, we kind of simplified it, but how do you actually use the dang thing? So we have a newly updated Pretty Focus camera foundations. If you've been around Pretty Focus, you've heard about this, or you've been a part of the roadmap. We have done almost a complete overhaul on the camera foundations for you. And so I just want to go into it a little bit. You can kind of see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There have been like 8 updates made to this, to the camera foundations, including the lesson that you just heard. So it's going to be available for replay here in the roadmap. But it's also right there, the top lesson in the camera foundations. So you have it. Along with like the transcripts and everything to go along with it. So if you are a reader, you're going to want that, right? You're just like, it was really overwhelming. It's also very condensed and a lot shorter than what this was. And then we go into setting up the camera. Yeah, you can go back to the other one because I have the whole list there. We go into setting up your camera. Like we have like little diagrams of the dials on your camera, what your camera setting menus, what your camera menu settings should be. And then we also have, the lesson is Canon, but we have a PDF to walk you through those settings on Nikon. I'm really excited about that edition. We talk about camera lenses. I have updates to aperture, updates to understanding the focal plane, better focus, having better focus, updates to focus, the focus lesson. And then we also included, this is brand new, and you guys, this is something that's not been seen by our course students yet. So you are the first ones getting these updates and getting this rollout. So there is a brand new camera setting cheat sheet. It is like 12 pages where I break all of the stuff down into a printout. So as you are practicing, you can see your camera, like it reviews the shutter speed, the ISO, the aperture. So you're shooting in manual, and like there's a cheat sheet for you right there. And then we've also included practice exercises. So as you go through and you learn it, there's like a guided practice to help you with each of those, which with shooting in manual, with your setting your aperture, your ISO, your shutter speed, making sure you have the best lighting, making sure you've got great camera settings, all of that. Plus, we also walk you through how to import, edit, and export photos in Lightroom. So if you're like new to photography and you're like, great, how do I get these photos onto my computer? We're going to walk you through that and those additional lessons there in Lightroom. And so this is just a little screenshot of the exercises where we walk you through setting up your camera, screen by screen, and then our food blog photography cheat sheet, right? Where we walk you through, it's basically a condensed version of module 1 in a cheat sheet format. And it's fantastic. And so you guys, the price of this is what you get. I know I kind of had it all on different screens, but this is like where it's condensed all onto one screen. The ones in red are the ones that are new and updated. And so you also get a coupon code. You get $197 off of tier 3. So the camera basics, the camera foundations course is $197, and then you get a $197 coupon code off of tier 3. So Stephanie just posted the link to the camera foundations for those of you who are interested in that. So let's answer some of these questions, because I can see this chat has been buzzing, and let's talk about them.
Yeah, I have a couple questions, but one thing I did want to say, and this isn't a sales pitch, but it's a sales pitch. But if so this is a helpful, if somebody is thinking about joining Pretty Focus tier 3, but they don't own a camera or know how to use a camera, getting into foundations is perhaps a great start, because you can learn to use your camera, before that clock starts ticking type thing on your time that you want to pay back the investment in Pretty Focus. So when you join the tier 3, you're going to already know how to use your camera, and typically people graduate faster when that happens. So if that's a concern for you, this is definitely, I think, the way to go. But then we also have people who just jump right in and do it too. But just something for people to think about, because there is a dollar for dollar. Like if you're going to join, you'll get all the money from them.
Yeah. And this is for people, whether you're joining Pretty Focused or not, and you just want to learn how to use your camera. So you have that benefit as well. Yeah. So whether you were like she said, you think that Pretty Focus is going to be there, it's in the back of your mind because you have plans, later on this year to enroll, or maybe you're not feeling comfortable with your camera yet. But again, before you join, this gives you the opportunity to learn it all before you join. And then when you do join, you'll start to get the coaching on it all. So let's talk about these questions here.
Okay.
I'm going to remove this.
Okay.
On the 5D, can you select more than one focal point? You can. However, single point focus, let me put this question up. Single point focus is going to give you the most accurate focus. So you will see just me use that one focal point. So that's why you just see me use the one. It's way more accurate. I hear you on the artificial light. Prioritizing artificial light may help me get by with my old Sony for now. I was trying to figure out what to prioritize, and I think it's investing in artificial light first. Yeah. I think that is huge. What we see a lot of sometimes is and I don't know if this is a student or just somebody who's considering joining first, is we see a lot of students switching like midway through because they're like, okay, I'm going to have to like do something because they're only shooting at night. And so a lot of our students do find that they are having to prioritize that artificial light. So we also have an artificial light masterclass for those of you who you've not joined yet and you want to get this mastered before you join. Like Stephanie said, and the clock starts ticking, right? Not that we have like a clock and kick people out after a certain amount of time, but we don't do that.
There's no ticking clock, but
not for us. But you have your goals that you want to meet.
But some people are like, I want to graduate in X amount of time. It will definitely help.
Okay, so question: you could buy a used Canon full frame mirrorless body plus an adapter and use the lenses from a vintage Rebel. I'm not sure what you mean by vintage Rebel. Those lenses are going to work. Like if you're talking about a 50 millimeter, it's going to work. If you're talking like it's going to work on the full frame.
Is that where you would need the adapter or no?
Say that again.
Would you need the adapter you talked about in this scenario?
Yes. Yep. Okay. If you're using a mirrorless and you want to use DSLR lenses, you have to have an adapter.
Okay.
Yep. What is considered an older camera? Well, this is kind of subjective, right?
Yeah.
In our experience with having lots of students with lots of different cameras, I would say anything over 5 years old is where we start to see issues with, quality images with technology. 12 years old is definitely, like we said, technology is out. So
yeah.
Okay, here we go. I have an A100. It was an amazing camera for my kids' sports a decade ago. It's taken me a minute to start pretty focused because I wasn't sure if it was ideal for food photography. I posted my module 1 homework today. So I'm not sure who this was, but how do you feel like your homework went? I would be really curious to know that. I don't know who this is, so I can't go back and look at your.
I do remember who this is because I talked to her in our Facebook group about this.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Great.
It's Lisa.
Okay.
So you can look after.
So I'm anxious to know if you're still listening, how your homework went. How do you think it went? Were you struggling? Was it challenging? Were you using artificial light? Were you using natural light? That will kind of help tell some of the story for us. Oh, she just said that. Okay. So Lisa, tell us, how did it go for you? Was it a challenge because you're working on an older camera? What challenges did you face? I would love to know that. And we can kind of troubleshoot it and talk through it with you guys.
I had 5 questions. One has been answered because my question was, what is old? I always ask because, this is going to be the sixth year. Mm-hmm. And so a couple years ago, I'm like, what is happening? Like, why are people's cameras not working? And it was like, Stephanie, cameras are now far enough in the technology world that some of them are getting old.
Yep. I mean, I started I started with a 60D. I started 7 years ago working for Stephanie with a 60D. I upgraded maybe 8 months to a year in, I would say.
Okay. That's what so I had questions around budget. Okay. When we say budget camera, we are saying like that's when you were showing like you'll show like an $800 kit. Is that kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, people just want to spend the least amount that they possibly can.
Right. And then when they're thinking about upgrading, you could do it after graduation and you start making money, but you're going to notice your skill has outpaced your camera, or your client will notice there's limitations. Is that usually how it works?
Mm-hmm.
So you could get some jobs under your belt.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. I did have, the person that reached out to me, via email, excited, she was looking forward to this live, is because she had a client who wanted like full resolution, big resolution on her photos, and she wasn't able to provide that to her because of sensor size and because of how old that it was, right?
Right.
That's going to make a big difference, right? So it does come up, and that's why we absolutely say no phones, because
Right.
no
Yeah.
phones, none. This is not going to happen.
You talked about an expo disc.
Mhm.
You know how important it was for a budget camera. Do you still use an expo disc if you're shooting mirrorless or full frame?
Yep, I do.
Okay. And then what about if you're using artificial light? Do you need an expo disc?
So with artificial light, our students typically do use Kelvin. So you can
Okay.
absolutely still use an expo disc with it. So Redonda walks through how to use the Kelvin and adjust the colors with the light that way, because with that artificial light, the colors are different than daylight, right?
Okay.
So yeah. And that's all done in camera. Like, you don't need to pay extra for Kelvin.
Okay.
Though there are some crop sensors that do not have Kelvin as an option.
Okay.
That's good to know. This is a question I've got. What's the average timeline that it takes people to graduate pretty focused? It's about 3 to 6 months.
3 to 6, and it will depend on you. So the two things it depends on, which are, you're going to be like, okay, got it, because it's common sense, are your skill. So like I said, if you don't know how to use your camera, it's going to take you longer than someone who does, because you're going to have to learn how to use your camera.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is how much time you have to devote to learning and practicing and all those things. So the people who treat it like a full-time job get through quicker. The people who can only do it on weekends, it'll take them a little longer. But 3 to 6, right? Like, I think we've interviewed, gosh, how many do you think we've interviewed? Like 50 people so far?
I don't even
grads?
know.
I don't know. We've interviewed quite a few grads, and 7 months, I think, is so far the longest we've got. Unless we do have some people who have to take breaks for personal reasons. Life happens, right?
That is,
yeah, but that's not like
a variable. That's not
exactly. That's
because content is too hard, or because it's life, right?
Yes, like
you got to give
doesn't get in the
room
way.
for
Kelly
life to
knows it, right? But yeah.
I just changed that. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I don't even know how I did it.
Just Kelly. Is it just Kelly?
I know.
just Kelly.
Never just Kelly. Kelly. No, Kelly, I do not use my 60D for food. I use it for right now, just for like demonstration purposes. I just can't sell it, because I'm like, I just still want to be able to like go back and reference menus and be able to like shoot on this camera to like help students troubleshoot. So that's where I use like the 60D. So, but it's not it's something that I shoot on. I shoot now on a Canon R6. So, and I'm even looking to upgrade from that already too. So
yeah,
it's terrible. I've never been more excited about cameras before than I got my mirrorless. Yeah. So,
I'll answer this one.
Yes.
So
you do it.
Yeah. So it is a complex question, because anything involving the economy is. I'm going to say the number one thing impacting grads is that the cost of ingredients, sometimes availability, but it seems less the further we get from the pandemic. So cost of ingredients. So any grads who are not charging extra for ingredients, which is not, we recommend charging extra for ingredients, but anyone who isn't is having to make the move to charge for ingredients, because it's just eating into their profits. Like when you're like $8 for eggs, right? You can't be eating the cost of ingredients. So that is huge. And so, those are discussions with clients. The other one I would say is that, food bloggers are typically the type of blogger who will do well in an economic downturn or slowdown or whatever, because people are cooking more and not going to restaurants. So typically they're we're the ones who will do well in these times. So that's not really a concern. I think the concern can be the types of foods that people, so making sure that you're doing like easy dinner recipes, things like that, like low cost ingredients, maybe not surf and turf, like things like that, where you're providing what the blogger needs for their readers, right? What they're going to make. So that would be another one. The third one I would say is in terms of price sensitivity. So I think in an economic downturn where food bloggers aren't really, they're not making less, right? So sometimes it can be the price sensitivity is not what you would think it is, and that people aren't willing to pay top dollar, because we have seen our grads are getting like top prices. What I see though is bloggers expecting really high quality and value to pay top dollar. And I think that's where we excel because of the education and the community and the feedback. So I think it would be harder for someone on their own, but I think for us, we have a grad group so people can talk and, we can educate in there and whatever happens. So I think those are the things I am seeing as of today. Right? Like who can predict the future, but that's where I am. I think food blogging, super well positioned. I think anyone starting the business now, super well positioned, because these are the times when you want to have control over your future.
Absolutely.
Right? So I think those I feel really good about. And so that's how I see it. I don't know if you are seeing anything else, but
I mean, I think it's really understanding food blogging more. And a lot of people still don't quite understand it. You talk about not eating, like people aren't eating out, right? And they're going to food blogs. I was like, you know what? I'm going to see, because we usually eat out more than we want to, right? So I'm like,
me
I'm
too,
going to
and I have a food blog.
I know, right? I was like, I'm going to see if we can go the entire month of January without eating out. And we've done it so far. But I tell you what, I have been on a lot of food blogs.
Yeah.
And so Stephanie, you say that, it's true. That's what I've been doing. Yeah. And not because I'm in this world, like not even because I'm in it, but because I'm like, I don't
life. Yeah.
Like you go and you spend $60 for a family of 4 and you're like, not going to do that. So it's that's how the food blogging works. They make more money the more people go and visit their blogs. And a lot of people are visiting blogs now.
Yeah. And I can tell you, so my traffic is changing as we get further into the year, like I would say traffic patterns. So previously, 9 p.m., this is when moms were getting on Facebook and looking at all the desserts I share. Cause, typically in the night, it was the Facebook dessert post. And I just clicked.
That's crazy.
And it's rice, pork chops, pot roast, chili, beef and shells, casserole, and there's a cookie recipe and a tuna melt. And so what I'm seeing now, traffic is in the nights is people meal planning, right? So I think it is changing. And so any grads who can respond to that, I think will do really well too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm looking at upgrading to either a R6 Mark II, maybe the R5. I don't know. We'll see. So I might actually have to sell some of my cameras.
What, one person doesn't need 5 cameras?
I know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, yeah, 5. I have 5 cameras.
So that would be number
6. I have 6 cameras. So
It's research, right? Like,
it is. That's why I'm having such a hard time selling them. But I'm like, okay, I haven't picked up my Mark III to even look at them and, and anyway. All right. No silly questions. I recently purchased the course.
no,
Do I need to enroll
you're
when it
in.
opens? Even
You're
though I
if
have
you
it
snuck
free?
in, girl,
Oh yeah.
you're in.
No. Yeah.
You're
No.
fine.
You're.
Yes, you're fine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got it.
I
Okay.
know.
Yeah. No.
It's
You're
so
good. You're
funny.
good.
We're always like, people sneak in all the time.
All the
And
time.
yeah, and we're like, how? But yeah,
We
it's
say
fine.
it's close, but they make their way in,
Yeah,
and we don't.
you're
That's
fine. Yeah,
fine.
no,
You're
no.
good. You're
Yeah,
good.
you're fine. And I hope if you haven't, that you post in the Facebook group, because you can feel the love in there. So don't be
Yes.
shy. No one's gonna police and come
Yeah.
get you.
So anybody, I just want to put this up there again. Anybody who is like, I've got a camera and I'm wanting to learn how to use it. The camera, Pretty Focus Camera Foundations is definitely made for you wanting to learn your camera. We've had several people enroll in this and then upgrade to Pretty Focus later. That's kind of what we're seeing, is that they're able to do that. Guys, I think the most thing, I am so excited about all of these updates. I think the thing I'm most excited about is the camera setting cheat sheet. Feel very excited about this. It's going to be so helpful as you are learning how to use your camera settings. It's really, like I said, it breaks down module 1 basically and condenses it down into 12 pages, walking you through how to use the exposure triangle and how to shoot in manual. Because the goal for us as photographers is we want to have as much control over the camera as possible. That's why I like to have more focal points. I like control. I like to be able to control as many variables as I can. And so, gosh, where was I going with that? I got derailed on my controlling thing.
You're like,
I just want control.
Yes.
And so it is going to, I'm really excited. I can't wait for you guys to see it.
So funny story today is, Sam's going to high school next year, like high school age. And he wants to get into art college. And so I was looking at the prerequisites, and, you have to have a diversity of art experience. Photography is one of them. So I was like, oh, Bud, we're going to have to do photography this year in our homeschooling. And he goes, can I just take Pretty Focus? And now I'm thinking, I'm just going to buy camera foundations for them, sit them down because mom can't help. And be like, for Melody, homeschool Sam.
Yes, I love it.
So then
That's amazing.
If he can learn it, we'll be like, literally anyone can do this.
That's amazing. Yes, please, Sam. Yeah. That would be awesome. So does anybody have any last minute questions before we wrap up? I've really enjoyed talking to you guys about this. This is the first time we've done a live like this. And so I hope that you found it was helpful and informative. And that you learned something about your camera, that it gave you some takeaways to think about maybe as you are upgrading or considering upgrading or when you want to upgrade. And so on the flip side, if you're new and you're wanting to buy a camera and you're wanting to enroll in Pretty Focus, or maybe you already have a camera and you just need to learn how to use it more. So I really hope that you guys learned something tonight. Oh, thank you.
We're back Thursday.
8
p.m. on Thursday. We have an amazing grad interview. So
this is going to be good. This is a good one this week. Yeah. It's exciting. So we'll be sharing all of that information. So make sure that you are looking for it in the next little bit. So thank you guys. We appreciate you guys. We love you. We hope you have a great night.